Welcome back to Citizen Extra. Many thanks indeed for staying tuned on whichever platform you're watching us on, YouTube, our website, www.citizentv.co.ke, and by downloading our Viewsasa app. Let's get straight into the next hour now. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees yesterday issued a strong warning that South Sudan could become the largest refugee crisis since the Rwandan genocide on the African continent, unless urgent measures are put in place to mitigate the humanitarian crisis that is currently developing in Africa's youngest nation. Now, the agency is appealing for at least $3 billion to support the people of South Sudan, with nearly 7 million people, including 2 million internally displaced and in need of urgent assistance and protection across the country. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be hosting someone to talk a bit about this, and let me introduce at this time Mr. Arnold Akujenu, who's Regional Refugee Coordinator, South Sudan, and a Special Advisor to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. I probably have scored 5 out of 10 for his introduction. I hope he'll forgive me for the pronunciation of his name. Welcome to the program.
Sure.
Many thanks indeed for finding time to be here with us. We have some graphics that we want to play now, and I want you to walk us through them. If we can put them on the screen right now, just to give you an idea for you watching us about the dire situation in South Sudan. So the conflict is in its 5th year. Yes. And the numbers that we're getting is 7 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance. You want to talk a little bit about that before we look at the next graphic?
Yeah, just to make it more precise.
Okay.
Indeed, 50 years in terms of conflict. And for people in need of humanitarian assistance, it's important to divide them in two. One is those who are inside of the country, and there we are talking about 4.5 million, including 2 million who are internally displaced, and those who are outside the country, those we used to call and are called refugees, and they are 2.5 as we speak now.
Okay. And so it's important to understand that their needs are different.
Those who
are leaving and those who are remaining within the country.
Indeed, all they need is humanitarian assistance and protection. But when you are in a country, you need national protection. And when you are outside the country, you need what we used to call international protection.
And you will come back and talk a little bit about specifics regarding that. I just want to get through the graphics very quickly. Please. Can we take a look at the next one, just to put some context to why we have chosen to have this discussion today? Can we have the next one now? And that coming up on your screen shortly. So nearly 2.5, and I think you've talked a bit about this, 2.5 million South Sudanese have fled to 6 neighboring countries, that's including Kenya. But we know a lot, or a big chunk of the refugees have gone to Uganda. We're seeing numbers of over 1 million, and Sudan as well, towards the north. And Africa's largest refugee crisis potentially since the Rwandan genocide. Just put that for us into context.
Yeah, because
some of our viewers may have been born after 1994.
Fortunately or unfortunately, I was the one who led UNHCR reaction or response to Great Lake Operation. But at that time, we were talking to about more than 3 million. At that time, more than 2 million went to Zaire, DRC, the current DRC. Half of that figure went to Tanzania, others in Burundi and in Uganda. And since that period, what we have been going through now with South Sudan is dramatically astounding, I would say. But the point is here is that there is no end to the process. This started 2 years after the newly born and the youngest country worldwide, and we thought that that will stop after a short while. But as we speak,
the war has dragged on.
And the country is just expurging its people, its population, and on daily basis, going to those 6 neighboring countries, Kenya, Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia, DRC, and Central Africa, close to 1,000 people.
Leaving every day?
Every day.
1,000 people?
1,000 people.
My goodness.
If we continue like that, by end of this year, we'll be over 3 million. Over 3 million refugees. And there, I'm not making any reference to the IDPs in the country. what is going on is just conflict. What people need is peace. Peace and peace.
Okay, you're really putting this into context for us. Let's look at the next graphic as well, even as some of those statistics dawn on you who's watching this particular program. So we get into specifics now. Your statistics show that 90% of the forcibly or forcibly displaced are women and children, and nearly 65% of them are under 18. The young, women and children are the most vulnerable in this crisis. And again, I'm sure this provides and causes challenges for you who's trying to bring in humanitarian aid and release, because for each group you sort of need to have different measures in place. I can allow you to talk about that briefly.
But the overall picture is that we are talking about refugee children.
Refugee children.
Crisis. You can talk about refugees, you can talk about women, you can talk about vulnerable people. But here we are in front of refugee children, because more than 65.
And they don't have access to education.
There's many of them, many of them did not attend any school, any schooling process over the last 2 years. And we are talking about the youngest nation worldwide. How can you spend 2 years, it may be more than 2 years, without any education for so huge number?
Where will you start eventually? I mean, how difficult will it be to get someone to go back to school?
To go back to school
years later.
And you are talking about education, but we can add to education water, sanitation, food, and what needed for kids, environment, family environment. And those we are talking about today, they don't have, most of them are without their parents or without their dad or their mom or without their brother. It's just outrageous.
Okay. Can we have one more graphic up there? Just the last one coming up now. So you have also warned the world that funding for the refugee crisis remains dismally low, and you're making an appeal of at least $3 billion. This comes to about 305 billion Kenya shillings. Why does the funding remain so low? And we have had representatives from UNHCR here before. They've stated that the world is now distracted. There are conflicts all over. Syria, a big issue. A lot of nations now have decided to first focus on their citizens before they look outside. But I can allow you to add on to that.
Once again, I really want to be precise here.
Okay, go ahead.
What the launch we took place yesterday is divided in two. There is the humanitarian response plan covering those who are inside South Sudan, and that one is 1.7 billion US dollars. And those who are outside the country, I already flagged the number, 2.5 million. And there, what the High Commissioner of Refugees is asking for is 1.5. Indeed, so difficult to imagine that from day 1 to day 2, we will receive all we are asking for. For your information, last year, we received 34%
of your requirements, or what you asked for.
There is a need to go beyond that figure, because not only the situation is worsening in terms of refugees number, but the living condition of those refugees are worsening day by day. Yes, we cannot split and talk about refugees and not talk about those who are in the country. But what is key here is not only what we are asking for. We need funds to take care of those who are outside. We need funds to take care of those who are inside. But what we need above every single Kenyan shilling or any US dollar is the peace in the country. In the peace, through the peace in the country, we will start state rule of law being reinstalled, governance to be reinstalled, institutions to be in place, and people easily allowed to return to their area of origin. We will start with IDPs, internal displaced persons, and later on we will see refugees returning home to build this youngest country.
That's the only solution.
That is the only solution.
Even if we raise all the billions in the world, but without peace there.
Without peace. But in the meantime, we need to find a way to care for and to take care of those who are outside, to cater them their need. And that is not, as we speak now, so easy.
Let's humanize this discussion. We've talked numbers of refugees. We've talked numbers of how much money is needed to help these refugees. The average Kenyan wakes up between Monday and Friday, takes a shower, takes breakfast, gets into a car or a bus or whatever, goes to work, spends the whole day at the office, comes back in the evening, sits with the family, watches TV. What does the average South Sudanese, what does their day look like?
Yeah, but very far from what you just described.
Paint for me a picture.
First, they are not in their country. Let's talk about refugees. And that is the worst situation one can imagine for any human being. The worst. You are not in your country, but you are not in your country because you decide to migrate. You are not in your country because you flee. You flee because in front there is a fear of violence, or you are directly affected by that violence. You may be called to walk and to walk miles and miles because crossing the border. To take a decision to leave your country under that kind of situation is the worst situation any woman can face. But when you went through that, and now you end up crossing the border in an area which you are not the one who decided to get there. You didn't go there once or twice as a tourist to check if that is the place to be.
Well for you.
You find yourself from day one to day two after a pilgrimage, after a long journey, but painful journey. You end up by mid-there. You are received by national authority along with UNHCR or other humanitarian actors. You will be given the possibility to go to a transit center. What we call transit center is where you will be for the time being until the local authorities decide
whether they'll allow you to
enter,
stay or
to. But what we are pushing for now, before UNHCR used to put, because the government used to put in place settlement, what we call refugee camp. Since September 2016, a declaration has been made in New York, and we are talking about the need to have a comprehensive refugee response framework.
Okay.
What we mean by that is that when you arrive as refugees, the example I just shared with you, no, the government should not settle a camp for you. The government should allow you to stay within hosting community.
Okay. Okay.
That is the new change. Therefore, when you are in the hosting community, you are benefiting.
You're able to be integrated?
Integrated.
Maybe get a job?
Job, maybe at least get a land.
Okay.
What is the case right now in Uganda?
Okay. This is working right now in Uganda?
Yes, Uganda. Uganda is proceeding like that. Not only you are among the hosting community, but if you are farmer, you have a job. If you are not farmer and you don't want to be an hosting community because you are coming from urban area, you will be allowed to move anywhere you want. And there, if there is any job opportunity, you will be given that job opportunity. But the point is, we are talking about countries already with scarce resources. They need job for their own citizens.
For their own, that's right.
And therefore, when the refugees are coming, you know, when you are in refugee hosting community, it's a bit easier if you are a farmer, if you are given land to find your way out. But what is critically needed is the international community reaction or response to this. They have to help the government to prioritize those regions in the national development plan and to put in place not only what one could call this land policy, you are giving land, but to put in place system which will enhance capacity, capacity, infrastructure capacity, social service capacity, education facilities, and all those elements.
If the international community, and I apologize for interrupting you there, if they do not listen, what will South Sudanese people look like in the next 5 years? What is their destiny if they don't pay attention to your warning? That's the international community. How bad can this?
I cannot imagine, my dear.
Unimaginable.
I cannot imagine that they will not react to this.
Okay.
The plea the pleas which have been made yesterday by the High Commissioner and the Emergency Relief Coordinator, I cannot imagine a minute that the international community did not pay attention to that and that we will fail. I cannot imagine anyone to be deaf to this kind of appeal. Those plans, those launching ceremony we went through yesterday, they need response. They need response.
And now.
Now, and not tomorrow. As we speak now, as we speak, people are fleeing. As we speak, there are kids who are waking up this morning, not sure that they will have milk, they will have anything to eat. There are families starving. I'm serious. And there are families who did not take any shower for many days now. And no one can imagine that those appeals will remain unattended.
Okay. You've said that peace is ultimately what South Sudan needs.
Absolutely.
Let me talk a little bit about some statements made by the U.S. envoy to the United Nations, that's Nikki Haley. She recently made some very strong statements about South Sudan. I want to read some of them to you. She called South Sudan's government an unfit partner. She asked the UN Security Council to do more, such as imposing an arms embargo on South Sudan to slow down the flow of arms and ammunition entering into the country, etc. If the U.S. begins to take this very tough position on South Sudan, what does that mean for your relief effort? Will it aid or harm your relief efforts?
I think this kind of statement is going through the right direction. That means that if appropriate steps are taken, conflict will cease in that country.
Okay.
Guns will be silent. And guns silence, that means that people have no more fear to stay in their country. That means also that those who are in the country, we have no more fear to return to the area of origin. That means that all parties involved in that, they will sit down around the table. There is a structure, a regional structure. We have been entrusted to deal with this matter, to deal with this conflict. What is IGAD? I'm sure that you know what is IGAD led since 2013. IGAD and AU, they led the process. That process came first with agreement. That agreement had been broken in 2013 and fighting resumed in 2015. Now, not now, last 1 month and a half ago, mid-December, a cessation of hostility agreement had been signed in Addis. Few days later, broken.
Back to where we are.
Back to where we are. 2 days later, people start fleeing again, going to Sudan. Sudan, when I took over my function, we were talking about 500,000 people. They are close to even beyond 1 million now. Sudan.
Refugees.
Refugees.
Who have gone to the north.
There are refugees who have gone to the north. There are refugees who have gone to the south. And that is the case of Uganda. That is the case of Kenya, where we are today. You know, Kenya, what we call, well, I went there yesterday, and the name is splitting my mind.
A camp or
they come refugees in the northern part of the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dadaab camp.
No. Dadaab is for Somalia.
Kakuma camp.
Kakuma camp. Okay. Sorry. Kakuma camp. I was there yesterday, accompanying the High Commissioner and the Emergency Relief Coordinator. We went to Kalobei region. A lot of progress have been made there. But those, if there is no cessation of hostility, Kenya will continue to receive refugees. Today, there are more than 100,000 in Kakuma region. But all effort, the Kenyan government, the county of Turkana, they are putting in this. If on daily basis refugees are coming, they cannot cope.
They cannot
sustain.
When Nikki Haley, again, the U.S. envoy to the UN, spoke some felt that her silent message was that South Sudan, if you don't get your house in order, America is going to give up on you. Let me talk a little bit about what she said. She said that the United States is giving up on South Sudan's president after backing the country's independence in 2011, investing over $11 billion. You're only asking for $3 billion. She accused President Salva Kiir of blocking aid to millions in need, despite a promise of free and unhindered access.
Absolutely.
If America gives up on South Sudan, if what she's saying happens, if the threat she gives out happens, what then happens to the biggest partner with the United Nations?
No, they should not give up. No one should give up. Not only U.S., but also the regional stakeholders.
Okay.
No one should give up on that particular country. We all need, or we have to, that is more than a duty. We have to be along with that country. We have to be along with that particular nation, because that is the youngest one, and that is part of our continent. The point here is not, do you vote for independence or you don't vote for? The point is not there. What we are talking about a country, the youngest one in our continent, and we are talking about people. At the independence, we are talking about 12 million South Sudanese citizens. More than half are in dire need in terms of humanitarian assistance or protection as we speak now. What is the future for this kind of country? What is the future for South Sudan? No one, no U.S.,
not the regional partners.
Neither the regional partners should withdraw from this process on a daily basis.
Okay.
Everyone, in particular political actors. But on top of that, South Sudanese political actors, South Sudanese political people, they should be the one bearing the flag in that.
Okay.
To bring peace into that country.
Okay. Because we trust that peace will get into, South Sudan will have peace one day, and lasting peace at that. When that finally happens, what sort of population dynamics will we see in South Sudan? What will it look like? Will we see a situation where men will be few and far between because a lot of them, passed on during the conflict? Will women have to play the role of mother and father in families? What sort of reconstruction efforts will need to take place? Just so peace comes, long-lasting peace comes, what will need to be done?
No, but what needs to be done is what IGAD is working on right now. Because IGAD did not give up because the cessation of hostility agreement was broken. They didn't give up. They are calling for another round of discussion as of next Monday.
Okay.
And they are calling all actors together. And they will be talking, yes, they will be talking about the need to reinstall this cessation of hostility agreement. They need a permanent ceasefire, but they will be talking about governance. They will be talking about the way this country should be governed when things start getting into the right.
So they're already looking into the future.
Oh, yes, and that's great. It's why I told you that no one should give up in this. It's not because, as we speak now, there's no hope that we should give up. We have to do what we can, our utmost, in order to maintain, even is a drop of hope, and to maintain and to try to increase the capacity given to all actors to put the necessary pressure on all stakeholders in that country, but at the same time to prepare people to build their future and to reinstall the huge capacity that country has. It's one of the richest country in terms of potential.
Resource rich and potential rich.
And all kind of potential, mineral, land, and everything. Water, energy, and all this. Nile crossed that country.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you got the pleasure to go to Juba.
Not yet.
Not yet. But I wish that one of the days you come along with me to see and to talk with the people of those countries, and you will see they are rich, culturally rich. I'm coming from West Africa. I'm just a fan of this. The first time I met South Sudan, it was in '88, in the northern part of the DRC, and to go back 30 years later and to meet not only those people, but their sons, but their kids, generation of refugees. No, this country requires and need a brighter future, because the potential are there. And the most important potential is people.
And they are there.
And they are there.
I think
they're ready to do what
this is a good place to wrap up this discussion. I mean, as media, we can try and amplify some of the messages that you've been sending out, but we certainly hope the right players are watching and listening, because some of the numbers that you've given out are definitely very worrying. Thank you so much. I was speaking with the Regional Refugee Coordinator, South Sudan, who is also a Special Advisor to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Mr. Arnold Akujanu.
Well pronounced. Thank you.
Thank you. Well pronounced? You're just saying that. Thank you so much. Thank you for finding time to be here with us. We immediately want to take you back to the Nyeri High Court now. We are ruling on a petition challenging the election of Madera Member of Parliament. RIGATHI GACHAGUA is going on. Let's listen in.
Formally or informally from the petitioner or his agents over the conduct of the election in any of the polling stations. On allegations of assisting voters, the respondents contended that the presiding officers do not vote for the disabled or illiterate voters, except that they only assist them in marking the ballots. The choice of whom to vote for is, however, left to them. The assistance given is ordinarily in the presence of the candidates' agents. They also contended that no particular polling station had been singled out in which the presiding officers are alleged to have inquired loudly from the voters their preferred candidates, or where the agents were denied the opportunity to accompany those particular voters who required assistance. In any case, no report or complaint was ever made of this kind of misconduct to any presiding officer in any of the polling stations. Like the first respondent, the second and third respondents also denied that the stamping of Forms 35A by the presiding officers was a requirement. However, even in those polling stations, the petitioner complained about the lack of stamping. The candidates' agents had signed the forms, which in itself goes to demonstrate that the results represented in those forms were authentic and a true reflection of the votes cast in the particular polling stations. In cases where agents did not sign the forms, it was only because they were not present at the polling station at the time the results were declared. In every other case where the agents had proved that they were duly authorized to represent the candidates, they signed the forms if they wished to. Where for any reason the agents were present but refused to sign the form, the third respondent's officers would record on the form the reason for the refusal. The second and third respondents contended, however, that in instances where the agents refused to sign the form, that in itself does not invalidate the results or raise doubts about the authenticity of the results. As far as the Riga Primary School polling station is concerned, the respondents refuted the petitioner's allegation that Form 35A of that station was not signed by the presiding officer. As for Kiangoma Primary School and all Kiaruyu polling stations, the vote counts were properly filled in Forms 35A, contrary to the petitioner's allegations that they weren't. On the discrepancy between the results posted in Form 35A and Form 35B, in respect of Gitangaruri Tea Buying Center polling station, the respondents admitted that it was an error, but which arose during the transfer of data from Form 35A to Form 35B and only affected one of the candidates, that is Tuku Fenasio Angombe, who was awarded 60 votes, yet he did not get any vote at all in that particular polling station. This error, according to the respondents, did not affect the result of the election. The respondents further contended that the number of total valid votes cast was 378, while the number of registered voters in that polling station is 402. It is obvious that, contrary to the petitioner's allegations, the number of votes cast was lower than the number of the registered voters. The respondents denied the allegation that the results were manipulated in favor of the first respondent through the KIMS kit. According to them, the constituency returning officer does not feed any results into the kits. That is a task reserved for the presiding officers. They also denied that the counting of votes was conducted in a shambolic and in a manner that was not verifiable. On the contrary, all the ballots were shown to the agents present at the time of counting. As far as the security of the statutory forms is concerned, the respondents contended that these forms were authentic and embedded with the necessary security features. They denied the petitioner's allegation that the ballot papers and boxes were not genuine or did not have the security features. On the similarity of the results cast for the candidates in various polling stations, the respondents simply denied there was such a similarity, and in any event, the petitioner had not pointed out any particular polling station or stations where this had occurred. The respondents also reiterated that the entire process of relaying and transmission of results from the polling station to the constituency tallying center was simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, transparent, open, and prompt. They also contended that the election was administered in an impartial, neutral, accountable manner, and that all the data entered in the KIMS kits correlated with all the data in Forms 35A as transmitted, and there was no delay or inaccuracy experienced in any polling station as alleged by the petitioner. The KIMS kits were all in order and captured all the duly filled Forms 35A, which were relayed to the constituency returning officer and to the National Tallying Center. However, the completion of transmission of the image of Forms 35A was dependent on the availability of 3G and 4G network coverage. The respondents denied that any violence could have been visited upon the petitioner's agents because he was not a candidate and therefore could not have had any agents in the constituency. In any case, no such incidents of violence or voter intimidation or bribery was reported. As for the recount or retallying of the votes, no request whatsoever was made for this exercise to be done in any of the polling stations within the constituency. The respondents concluded that the petitioner has not met the threshold required by the law to grant any of the orders prayed for in the petition because it is lacking in substance and on merits. They reiterated that the results announced and declared by the second respondent are a true reflection of the will of the majority of the electorate of Mathira constituency. Accordingly, the petitioner's petition ought to be dismissed. Now, with these competing pleadings, the parties agreed on issues. And in this regard, they agreed on two issues only, and which they framed and read to court as follows. Issue number one: whether the respondent was validly elected and declared as a member of Parliament for Mathira constituency in the elections held on 8th August 2017. Issue number two: whether the member of National Assembly elections for Mathira constituency held on 8th August 2017 was conducted in a free, fair, transparent, and credible manner in compliance with the provision of the Constitution and all relevant provisions of the law. A secondary issue was who was to bear the costs of the petition. It is obvious that the first two issues are framed in a fairly broad terms, and therefore it is likely that other secondary issues will branch from those main issues. Now, if and when that happens, they will be disposed of within the broad framework of the agreed issues. So from those issues, I have laid out the evidence by both the petitioner and his witnesses and the respondent's evidence and their witnesses. I will not go through it, but I'll come to my analysis of the evidence. My assessment of the petitioner is of a litigant torn between pursuing what he believes is a justifiable cause in his own right and seeking to protect the interest of a third party who, in the circumstances of this case, would have been best suited to drive her own agenda, if at all she reasonably believed that she has a sustainable cause of action against the respondents. My opinion is rooted on the undeniable fact that although the petitioner presented his petition generally as a non-aligned ordinary litigant, independent of any party or candidate, there are yet numerous instances in the petition and the affidavit in its support, together with the affidavit of his witnesses, where he has held himself out either as one of the candidates who contested to represent the electorate of Mathira constituency in the National Assembly, or is representing the interests of Christabel Phyllis Maranga, who is presented as having been aggrieved because she thinks she lost the contest unfairly. This Honorable Court made it clear to the petitioner at the earliest opportunity possible that he was not a candidate, and therefore there was no chance that he could represent himself as such. In the same vein, he was reminded that he could not succeed if he purported to approach the court in a representative capacity without first establishing that there indeed exists a law that allows him to lodge an election petition on behalf of another person, and that he had complied with such a law. He couldn't surmount this latter hurdle, and for this reason, parts of his pleadings and depositions in the petition and in the affidavit, respectively, were struck out. But as it will soon be clear, it turns out that despite the offending parts of the petitioner's pleadings and his evidence having been expunged from the record, their relics lingered on. Their net effect has been not to help the petitioner's cause, but to compromise his position as an independent litigant in his own right, even in those instances where he has attempted to stand out as such. Now, the analysis of the evidence will no doubt shed more light on this particular point. The allegation that the voters, who for one reason or the other could not vote on their own, were manipulated, is to say the least bare. In the first place, the petitioner was not certain of the polling station in which this manipulation is alleged to have been perpetrated. It is only at his cross-examination that he revealed the station he had in mind, but which incidentally was not named in either the petition itself or any of the affidavits sworn by himself and his witnesses. It is also not lost to this court that he named Kamunyuini Youth Polytechnic as the station in issue only after he was referred to Form 35A, filed in court by the third respondent. It also emerged that even in this particular station, an agent for Phyllis Wamaranga signed the declaration of the results. The petitioner made most of the name Wamaranga, arguing that it was not his employer's name, and therefore Phyllis Christabel Maranga's agent did not sign the declaration. Granted, the petitioner may be right that Phyllis Wamaranga and Phyllis Maranga were the names of probably two distinct individuals. However, it is noted that Phyllis Christabel Maranga neither denied that she had an agent at this particular polling station, nor that such agent did not sign the declaration. The petitioner himself admitted that there was no evidence that any of the agents present refused to sign the Form 35A. It must be remembered that since the petitioner was not a candidate, he could not have had an agent at this particular polling station. But since he invoked the name of one of the candidates, he was, at the very least, bound to disclose the source of his information and name who the agent of this particular candidate was, and whether he was privy to the allegations made by the petitioner, and most importantly, whether he declined to endorse the results as declared at Kamunyuini Youth Polytechnic polling station.
Well, a High Court ruling being read out on a petition challenging the election of Madeira Member of Parliament RIGATHI GACHAGUA. We'll take you back there as soon as the judge has concluded reading that particular ruling, and of course what the verdict is as well. I want to show you some pictures now from Mombasa County, where our correspondent on the ground has informed us that there is a crackdown on individuals who have been providing or have been caught with plastic bags. Those are the pictures that you are seeing on your screen at the moment. We can see that county workers, possibly working with NEMA and other agencies, are gathering the evidence against these individuals, which is in the form of these plastic bags. And of course, for those who still provide plastic bags, they need to be licensed by NEMA. But it has been a known fact that there are those who are providing these bags illegally, discreetly, so to speak. And so some of them have been arrested in Mombasa County. Our correspondent Asha Bekidusa will a bit later on give us more details regarding these. But we wanted to immediately bring you these live images now, and to let you know, wherever you are, that if you are caught with plastic bags and you don't have a license to distribute or use them, then you could face the same fate. And the county officials and NEMA could come for you. So this is what is happening in Mombasa County. A crackdown on plastic bag traders is underway at the moment. And from there, we want to give you an update regarding 3 NTV staff members, 2 editors, Linus Kaikai, Larry Mado, and reporter Ken Mijungu. We want to show, of course, we'll replay for you some of the pictures from last night, not this night, but Wednesday night rather, when they had to spend the night at their offices because they feared being arrested by plainclothes policemen who had been spotted at the entrance to their building and, of course, at the rear exit as well. We can bring to you information now that Justice Luka Kimaru has granted NTV journalists Linus Kaikai, Larry Mado, and Kenneth Mijungu anticipatory bail of 100,000 Kenya shillings. He has ordered the 3 to appear before the Directorate of Criminal Investigation on Monday to assist in investigation on what charges we are not sure just yet. This justice has also restrained the police from arresting and detaining these 3 gentlemen. So just to give that update to you one more time, Justice Luka Kimaru has granted NTV journalists Linus Kaikai, Larry Mado, and Kenneth Mijungu anticipatory bail of 100,000 Kenya shillings. He ordered the 3 to appear before the DCI on Monday to assist in investigation. On what charges, again, we are not sure. He has also restrained the police from arresting and detaining them. So a sigh of relief for these journalists from the Nation Media Group. In other news updates, which you get on Citizen Extra, the High Court has ordered the government to reinstate Dagoretti North Member of Parliament Simba Arati's bodyguards and return his confiscated firearm. We received reports yesterday that his firearm had been confiscated, and we know that over the last 2 or 3 days, the bodyguards of key members of the National Super Alliance and of the National Resistance Movement have seen their security teams withdrawn. We know Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka had also informed members of the press on Tuesday that his bodyguards had been taken away from him. And yesterday, we know that Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, among other NASA leaders, had also seen their security teams withdrawn. and their firearms confiscated. So Simba Arati has gotten that court order in his favor. As to whether the government will return his firearm, however, for that reason, we will have to wait and see. So that is the latest update regarding Honorable Simba Arati. His bodyguards should be reinstated, that's according to the courts, and his confiscated firearm should be returned as well. In other news updates, the U.S. Department of State and the European Union have slammed NASA leader Raila Odinga's January 30th swearing-in and the shutdown of television stations. In separate press statements posted on their websites, they emphasized that all leaders and the government should obey the Kenyan Constitution and the rule of law. The U.S. Department said it rejects actions that undermine Kenya's Constitution and the rule of law. Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said that Uhuru Kenyatta was elected president on the 26th of October 2017 in a repeat poll that was upheld by the Supreme Court. The U.S. Department of State also criticized the government's shutdown of 3 television stations and its move to intimidate and restrict the media. The U.S. also urged Kenyans to have a national conversation to build cohesion and address long-standing issues. In other updates that we are bringing for you now, Deputy President William Ruto has dismissed NASA leader Raila Odinga's oath on Tuesday as comical. While commissioning the construction of the 23-kilometer, 875 million Kenya shilling Gatanga-Nyaga Road in Murang'a, Ruto said that the government will not be dragged into dirty politics. The Deputy President also said that President Uhuru Kenyatta will not watch as opposition leaders drive the country into violence, but will work towards uniting the country.
Wangoje. There is time for everything. Hata Biblia inatufundisha ya kwamba kuna wakati wa kila jambo. Wakati huu ni wakati wa kuwafanyia kazi wananchi wa Kenya. Kuna wakati itafika tutafanya siasa, na sisi ni mafundi wa hiyo mambo ya siasa, tutafanya siku hiyo. Kwa sasa tufanye mambo ya maendeleo.
Na wananchi kutoka kila sehemu ya Kenya wamejua sasa, wametofautishana kazi ya Jubilee na ile ya watu ya NASA. Kazi ya Jubilee ni ya barabara, maji, stima. Ya NASA ni kuapisha watu kutoka Jumatatu mpaka Jumatatu hiyo ingine.
Well, the late widow of former Vice President Michael Kijana Wamalwa will be laid to rest tomorrow in Kitale. A funeral mass for the late Yvonne was held here in Nairobi with leaders paying tribute to her. The mass was attended by both government and opposition leaders. At the time of her death, she was a deputy director at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in charge of the Asia and Australasia region.
Mike, and she loved Mike, and she loved her family. And she was, in a way, like the Statue of Liberty. She became the mother of many orphans. She loved her God, she loved her country, and she loved her family. And that is a person we have lost today.
We were in Perth, in Western Australia. And when she got information that I was there, she, together with one of my nieces who lives in Canberra with her, they took a flight all the way from Sydney to come and visit us in Perth, Australia. Yvonne, by the way, is a very close friend of my wife, Ida Odinga. And Ida has also conveyed her condolences today.
Let's now cross the borders and tell you what's happening in other parts of the world. Spanish police have broken up a prostitution ring in Zaragoza and freed 16 Nigerian women who were forced into prostitution, police announced yesterday. Police said the women from Benin City in southern Nigeria were promised a better life in Europe. Once in Spain, authorities believe the women were forced into prostitution to pay the debt sustained during the trip from their countries and threatened with a voodoo oath. 11 people were arrested during this police operation. Police said most of the arrests were part of a prostitution ring that operated in Spain, Italy, Germany, and Denmark. Well, just before we take the break, we also want to let you know that France's President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron arrived in Dakar, Senegal yesterday ahead of a 2-day visit. The French presidential couple was welcomed by Senegal's President Macky Sall and First Lady Mariam Faye Sall. The governments of Senegal and France will co-host the Global Partnership for Education, an initiative that supports 65 developing countries to ensure basic education for every child, to be held from the 2nd to 3rd of February in Senegal. The event, which will bring together donors and international organizations, seeks to raise $3.1 billion from donors to support the education of 870 million children in 89 developing countries. Well, from focusing on the dire refugee crisis in South Sudan and, of course, in the countries around South Sudan, in the next hour we'll be talking about Kenyatta National Hospital and a probe showing there that revelations emerged that this facility is understaffed and ill-equipped, and this all came out after the National Assembly's Health Committee toured the facility as part of a fact-finding mission. We have their representatives and other people within the health sector to talk a bit about that on the other side of the break. You're watching Citizen Extra. We take a quick break. We will be right back.